Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unlocking one of the absolute most fascinating mysteries in both human biology and sports history. We're asking a simple question. What is the actual true peak age for athletic performance? We're going to look at the hard science, some wild historical anomalies, and what the data really tells us about our biological clock. It's a journey that totally challenges everything we think we know about getting older. To kick things off, just listen to this incredibly damning psychological assessment. Pelé is obviously childish. He lacks the necessary fighting spirit. He is too young to take the hits. I don't think it's advisable to take him. Wow. That was actually delivered by João Carvalho Hayes, the Brazilian national team psychologist, way back in 1958. And he was talking about a 17-year-old kid right before the World Cup in Sweden. The experienced veterans on the squad literally had to step in and convince the coach to ignore the doctor and just play the boy. And, well, you know how that ends. That 17-year-old went on to score a hat trick in the semifinal, plus 2 more goals in the final, securing the World Cup for Brazil. That legendary 1958 tournament cemented Pelé as the youngest goal scorer in World Cup history. He was just 17 years old and 249 days old. But if you flip to the exact opposite end of the World Cup spectrum, we find Cameroon's magnificent Roger Milla. In 1994, Milla scored against Russia at the incredible age of 42. He actually broke a record he himself had set 4 years earlier. Think about that. 2 wildly different stages of life, separated by a quarter of a century, yet both of these guys were completely dominating on the exact same world stage, playing against the absolute best on the planet. Which brings us to the central mystery of our explainer today. So what is the ultimate age for peak athletic performance? If a 17-year-old teenager and a 42-year-old veteran can both rewrite history on the exact same football pitch, when do human beings actually peak physically? I mean, are we at our absolute biological best right out of the gate in our teens? Or do things like mastery, strategy, and endurance mean we peak much later in life? Section 1. Finding the peak age. To answer our question, we're turning to a massive, comprehensive study from CPAR. That's the Center of Excellence in Population Aging Research. They analyzed over 10,000 Olympic athletes to find the biological truth behind our sporting primes. And honestly, the data shows the sheer extremes of human capability. Take this number, 12. That was the age of the youngest athlete competing at the recent Tokyo Olympics. Her name is Hen Zaza, a remarkable table tennis player from Syria. And historically, the youngest athlete to ever compete was literally a 10-year-old gymnast back in 1896. But contrast that immediately with this next number, 66. That was the age of the oldest Olympian in Tokyo, the Australian equestrian Mary Hannah. And historically, it goes even higher. Oscar Swan won a silver medal in shooting at age 72. It's just an incredibly wide spectrum. But when we aggregate all of this data from 10,000 athletes to find the absolute peak, some truly fascinating patterns begin to emerge. And this brilliantly illustrates how age spreads wildly across different sports. When you map out the median ages of male Olympians across various events, you get this really intriguing U-shaped curve, especially in swimming and running. For example, in freestyle swimming, the athletes doing the absolute shortest sprint, the 50-meter, and the longest endurance distances are actually older than those competing in the middle distance events. In fact, the 50-meter dash features the widest age range of all. You've got swimmers as young as 16 lining up against competitors as old as 37. The data proves for sure that peak age isn't just one magic number. It's completely dictated by the specific physical demands of the event itself. Section 2. Explosive power versus endurance. Let's break down exactly why that U-shape exists, because it gets right to the core of our biology. Basically, young bodies, which typically peak in their early to mid-20s, are primed for raw processing power. They rely heavily on fast-twitch muscle fibers. Those are the fibers that fire rapidly for sudden, explosive movements. But as we age, our biology shifts. Older bodies lose some of that fast-twitch capability, but they begin to absolutely dominate in slow-twitch muscle performance. Those are the fibers that process oxygen super efficiently and are incredibly resistant to fatigue. On top of that, older athletes bring superior pain management, strategic decision-making, and just a calmer psychological disposition to the table. To see this in action, compare the ultimate test of speed with the ultimate test of stamina. The 100-meter sprint is all explosive power, right? Youth dominates here, plain and simple, with a median age of 25. But compare that to the marathon. The median age for an Olympic marathoner jumps to 30. And get this, the oldest male runner in Tokyo was 46. Endurance events deeply favor older athletes because of those fatigue-resistant slow-twitch fibers, and honestly, the mental fortitude you only build up over a lifetime of training.
Section 3. The aging athlete trend.
Across the board, we're seeing that the peak age for athletes isn't static. It's moving. Since 1992 alone, the average age of an Olympian has increased by 2 whole years. So the crucial point is understanding why this shift is happening. A massive turning point was the 1980s. The widespread professionalization of sports allowed athletes to actually earn livable, often highly lucrative wages. Basically, they didn't have to quit in their mid-20s to find a real job anymore. Combine that new financial stability with massive leaps in sports medicine, highly advanced training regimes, and cutting-edge equipment like better running shoes and highly engineered bikes, and you have the perfect recipe for extending an athletic career deep into the 30s and 40s.
Now, what's really interesting about this data is how these aging trends appear even within a single sport, entirely dependent on the specific role you play. If you look at the median age of FIFA World Cup players, goalkeepers are consistently the oldest players on the pitch, followed by defenders, and then forwards are the youngest. Why is that? Well, forwards rely heavily on explosive power and running speed to beat defenders. Goalkeepers, on the other hand, rely heavily on psychological resilience, positioning, and split-second strategic decision-making. And those are traits that actually improve significantly with experience and age. We see a very similar evolution in professional tennis. Back in 1991, the average age of a top 100 men's player was 24. But by 2021, it had jumped all the way to 28. This is exactly what allowed legends like Roger Federer and Serena Williams to continue competing at the absolute highest levels even as they turned 40. And part of this is due to how the game of tennis itself evolved. The sport shifted away from the explosive serve and volley style and moved toward intense baseline backcourt rallies. This new style puts a massive premium on endurance, allowing older, stamina-rich players to excel. Cricket serves as another perfect mini case study of this biology at work. The data from One Day International shows that bowlers, particularly seam bowlers who rely on raw power and speed to hurl the ball down the pitch, they peak younger, around 27 to 28. Batsmen, however, they require immense precision, timing, and strategic patience to read the ball. Because of this heavy reliance on acquired skill and experience, their average age sits higher, around 30. However, I should point out, not every single sport is seeing this massive jump in age. Contrast the overall aging trend with high-impact sports like the Australian Football League, or AFL. It is a brutal, multi-skill sport. Players sprint vast distances, muscle opponents out of the way in midair, and take some seriously heavy tackles. Because of the sheer physical toll and impact, rapid cellular recovery and joint repair is essential. And frankly, that's just something younger bodies do much, much better. As a result, the median peak age in the AFL has remained incredibly stable around 25 since the 1980s.
Section 4. Playing at any age. Let's move to the everyday community and see how this builds on what we've learned. What happens at the Olympics or the World Cup often reflects broader demographic changes in society at large, and the numbers here are truly inspiring. We are seeing a massive surge in older community athletes. Back in the year 2000, only about 30 to 40% of Australians over the age of 65 were regularly participating in sports. Fast forward to 2020, and that number has skyrocketed to an incredible 86 to 92%. That is huge. While younger folks might still dominate high-impact sports like basketball, older demographics are flocking to precision sports like golf, bowls, and widespread recreational walking. It absolutely proves that the human drive to move, compete, and stay active doesn't just vanish the second we lose some of our fast-twitch muscle fibers. So whether it's Pelé shocking the world in a World Cup final at 17, Roger Milla dancing by the corner flag at 42, an equestrian winning silver at 72, or just the soaring numbers of seniors joining their local sporting clubs, the data is crystal clear. Human potential is stretching further than it ever has before. Sure, our biological clocks might dictate when we're best suited for an explosive sprint versus a grueling marathon, but they absolutely do not mean we have to stop playing. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Are you letting your age dictate your limits? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you learned something fascinating today, and I'll catch you next time.